Welcome to the Oselo podcast. I'm Sophie, Oselo's Digital Marketing Associate. Ann Stanley, thank you so much for joining us today. We are all very excited to hear about the growth and how Anicca Digital has made it through the absolute craze of digital marketing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Sophie. It's a real pleasure. It's great to be one of your first speakers as well. So thank you. Thank you very much.
That's okay. So let's get started. Tell us about the beginnings of Anicca Digital.
Okay, well, it's our 15th birthday, so there's not that many digital marketing agencies that have been around for 15 years. I've actually been in digital marketing for 20 years. So I started back in 2002 when I was working for another agency, but that's not my first career because I'm actually at the end of my career. I'm not that far away from retirement, which is really scary. And I know I look too young to have two grandkids, but it's true. I've got two grandkids. But my first career was in science and manufacturing. I actually came to Leicester to do biology. And being a bit of a scientist, I then wandered into marketing and business development and actually ended up in a clinical trials company where we were recruiting volunteers. And I did my Chartered Institute marketing exams, and there was this new thing called e-marketing. And I was really intrigued. What's this thing, e-marketing? So I ended up going to a very, very early internet world, right at the beginning, 2000, just after the millennium. And I ended up working for this company called MediaCo. And my life has sort of never stayed still since, really. And then a few years later, a close friend of mine who I've known for literally more like 40 years, we decided to build a property website. So I was actually still working with the other company at the time. So we went off and built this property website. And of course, 2007, there was a bit of an economic crash. So we abandoned trying to sell property. And that was when the first version of Anicca set up. So a long time ago, 15 years ago. And of course, at that time, there was hardly anybody in the industry. And we really stood out because we were different and we did things in a different way.
Yeah, wow, okay. Well, happy birthday to Anicca. So what were your original motivations and inspirations for setting out Anicca, and have you seen them change throughout the years of
Definitely. I mean, no intention of, when I left to do the property business, and no intention of setting up an agency. And really didn't think that was what we were going to do. But as soon as we started seeing the writing on the walls that the sector was changing, we thought, oh, well, let's try and combine selling property and digital marketing. And Alex was a really good web developer. And I was already doing a lot of Google advertising by then, which was Google AdWords, and I was really good at it. So we decided to start offering that to other people. And there was only three of us. And then it grew really rapidly from there. So it was like many people, I ended up stumbling into setting up our own business. It was never really intended, but we were very good at it, and we got great results for everybody. We'd learnt on our own money, so we knew how to really understand it. And we were one of the first agencies in 2010 that got the Google accreditation. And now we're a Google Premier Partner, and there's only a couple of hundred in the country. So we've gone from strength to strength.
Wow, that's really impressive. So I know you said that you fell into it. How did you find the transition going from biology, sciences into marketing?
Well, interestingly, I'm still a scientist at heart. And actually, the bits of marketing that I really love are quite numerical. So I love pay-per-click, I love Google Analytics, and we run a lot of experiments. So there's quite a natural fit with that. And that sort of approach of proving it, that's sort of my slogan, really. I've got this slogan of prove it, which really means that you use the data to actually make sure that you do the right thing. And also, you don't just try something because you think it might work. You actually test it and see if it works. And prove it works in other ways as well, because I've had to work so hard to get to have my own company and progress my career, because obviously I went to university in the late 70s, and there was quite a lot of glass ceilings that I had to smash through.
Yeah.
So it was a lot harder then. And I would say that the first half of my career was a lot harder to progress than it was the second half, because once you've got your own business and you've got great people working with you, you can really progress much faster, and you're in control of your own destiny. So the only thing really is that we've done everything ourselves. It's all been organic growth. So there's now 26 of us. And I've got 2 other directors and a senior management team. So it's not all about me anymore. Because everybody thinks Anicca is Anne, and it's not. It's completely unrelated. It actually stands for impermanence. It's a Buddhist term because everything's always changing. So it's really interesting how it's evolved. But now we're a proper grown-up company with big ambitions, and we doubled in size. Last year was a massive growth for us. COVID was terrible, we really went backwards during COVID. So yeah, onward upwards really. Still got lots of plans.
Yeah, but that's amazing to hear that you managed to do it organically and everything like that. That's really, really fascinating, because I know a lot of companies, especially the companies that we recruit for as well, they're very heavily invested into.
Yeah.
And some of them struggle for seed funding and just funding in general. So the fact that you did it organically, I don't think a lot of companies will be able to say that they've done that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because most people assume that there's loads of companies that employ 250 or 50 or more people. That's not true. I think it's something like 96% of companies employ less than 10 people or something like that. So actually, to get to an agency of 30, but we want to grow faster. And some other agencies, some younger agencies, have grown much faster than us. And sometimes I think it might be because as you get towards the end of your career, you might be a little bit less risk adverse. But I think it's just circumstances, what sectors you're in.
Yeah.
And we were never prepared to grow at the expense of quality. We always wanted to work with really good quality clients and also have a really good quality service. So I'd rather be working with people like Uber for Business and Eon and Experian, rather than just going for loads and loads of clients and not doing very good quality work. For me, it's about what we produce for the clients and the quality of the work we do, and being innovative and bringing in new technologies that really inspires me and the rest of the team.
I think that's the best way to go. Definitely, sometimes quality over quantity. You need to make sure that everything is the best, so you can be the best at the end of the day.
Well, we've only got 45 clients, yet our turnover is over 2 million. So you get an idea that on a monthly basis, and a lot of the clients have been with us for years. I mean, there's about 5 clients that we've had for over 10 years. We do get some churn, because one of the problems of another thing we do is a lot of training, and we spend a lot of time helping the internal teams. So quite often what will happen is that we'll have a client, we'll do a lot of the different marketing channels for them, but then we also upskill them. So sometimes we make ourselves redundant. So we're always looking to grow, and we do spend a lot of time helping other people. So we're very altruistic, and I think that's how you met us, wasn't it? I think you met us through one of our conferences.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was a very inspiring talk for me. I learnt a lot, and I thought, have to meet this person. I was very intrigued about the company and the frameworks that you were talking about.
Yeah, that's really nice to know. I mean, we basically do a free webinar every week on a Friday morning, which anybody can sign up for. We do a conference every year, and we're also doing a lot of training programs. There's the digital skills boot camps, which we've put through. By the end of the year, over 300 people would have gone through it, and that leading to a qualification. And of course, in this industry, skills are a big problem.
Yeah.
So we're trying to sort of bring in the next generation of digital marketers as well, which obviously we get paid for because it's a government grant, and most of the students and the learners get it for free. But it's become a really important part of what we do. Yeah. So it's a combination really of having really highly skilled technical people that know their craft, but then also can train other people. So that sort of combination works really well for us.
Yeah, I think that's really important to really highlight that you're doing the training, because I know for you and me, we both went to university, and I know we studied different things, but at the end of the day we had that university experience in teaching, whereas now personally I think university is becoming a little less popular and people would rather go out into the real world and get experience. So the fact that you're doing these training camps really does allow people to get first-hand experience without the university side, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a mix. So we do get a mix of people that are self-employed, unemployed, and also some people that have got jobs already. The employers have to contribute. But what we are trying to do with the training is get everybody's career to go up and close the digital skills gap. And as you know, digital marketing is often quite a lot better paid than maybe a traditional marketing job would be, or working in an office. So that's what we want. We want highly paid jobs, and there's a shortage. You wouldn't believe the the skill levels of the people that we employ, and the cost of salaries, particularly as you're a recruitment agency, you will know this, has been very high, as everybody can work remotely and they can pick and choose where they want to work.
Yeah.
So we have gone for, even though we've got this lovely office, which we bought about 5 years ago, and it's quite a shame really because it's empty quite a lot of the time. But we've got people from all over the country working for us now, and every month we get together and have a big social and bring everybody together because we need that cultural element as well.
Yeah, of course you do. Of
Yeah.
course you do. Have you found the cost of living a little bit competitive, especially with bringing new people on at all?
It was before then. It was at the beginning, sort of mid-COVID, when we started to grow again, and sort of basically 18 months ago, we had to bring in a lot of new staff at senior level, and everybody was scrambling for staff. So salary bills went up by 5 to 10k, and of course you have to raise everybody else's salary. We did give everybody a 5% pay rise back in April because we saw, I never expected inflation would be something like 11% to whatever it was announced yesterday. But so we do try and look after our staff, and quite a lot of them go on and do exams and things, and that's why we've got people that have been here for a long time.
Yeah.
I do think having a really good team and investing in people is really crucial, and we're very transparent and very honest. So every month when we have the staff meeting, we tell them whether the business is going okay or whether it's growing, and so I think that's very important if you want to grow a business, that you bring the team with you.
Yes.
And that's been the biggest thing that I've learned over the years, is that you can't do it all on your own. Classic thing with a digital marketing agency is you need a visionary, which I think is me. I'm the one that's always looking for the future and speaking and doing the external bit. But then you need the integrator. And I'm very lucky that I've got a director, Darren, who's been with us. He's our MD. He's been a director for 8 years, but been with Anicca a lot longer than that. And he sort of oils the wheels behind the scene.
Right.
And then Angie Longman, who's she's really interesting because she worked with us for a number of years, and then she moved to Yorkshire. And of course, we couldn't work with her. Then COVID came along and she's back. So one of the benefits of COVID is we've been able to recruit these people from all over the country, including people that we were desperate to get back. And she's operations director. And then you've got the rest of the team. So it's not about you anymore. It's about the bigger team. And that's, I think, really important for CEOs that are thinking about their exit or what happens next. You've got to have that team around with you that you can rely on and focus on what you're good at.
Of course.
I can't do the detail and stuff that they do, but I really love the strategy and the technical aspects of what we do.
Yeah, no, teamwork it really does make the dream work.
Absolutely.
I think everyone can agree on that. So in your background, your university courses, and just everything you kind of learn up to where you are now, do you think that has helped you overcome definitely some challenges that you would have faced?
With university, when I went to university, it was a big barrier. If you didn't go to university, careers weren't open for you. Now, you remember I did science and I wanted to work in a lab, and I actually did medical research and then worked in the leather industry. So I did about 20 years of working in research and labs. If you hadn't got a degree, you would never have had the experience that you would require as a stepping stone to get into those jobs. Right. For me, we still do employ quite a lot of graduates, although we don't only employ graduates. And the reason for that is the mindset of having had to go through the process of doing a degree, and the challenging, the way that they have to think slightly differently than somebody that's just done A-levels. So I think there's a big difference. Also, a career in digital marketing is incredibly fast-paced, particularly if you're working in an agency. It's probably less so in-house, where you're only working on one client and you've got longer timescales to get things done. Whereas in an agency, it's like this all the time. You know, you've got a limited amount of time. So that high pressure environment is quite a shock to people. Right. And I think that we assume that when graduates come in, they know nothing, and we take them through quite an extensive recruitment process. So we have almost like a mini apprenticeship, you know, a week where they do lessons and do exercises to really see, because everybody forgets if they're in that environment that they're being interviewed. So it allows us to cherry pick. One of the girls that's actually here today came from that from that background, and she did brilliantly. And then we've given her a job. So we've always done that.
Yeah.
And the other nice thing about being in Leicester, where we're based, is it's a university town. There's 2 universities.
Yeah, cool.
And so ever since Anicca started, there's always been placements and grants to bring on students. And my only regret is that we didn't do it absolutely every year. Some years, we were a bit quieter, or we were focused on other things. And I think, the best success story is actually Darren, who came in as a graduate. He ended up working in doing Google Ads and paid media. Then he became head of department. Then he became ops director, and now he's MD. So that progression from just a placement to MD is an incredible story. And I just wish we'd done it more every year, because now we're quite top heavy, and we haven't got as many graduates, and we probably should have bring people in at different levels.
Yeah.
Definitely worth having a scheme like that every year. If you can do, irrespective of your size, you need to be looking quite long term with your recruitment strategies, particularly if you're in an area with low skills, and you need to basically grow your own staff.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And full well, you get to train them as they come in as well. So they are Anicca, born and bred almost.
Yeah,
sort of
absolutely.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's more difficult now because, of course, everybody's not sitting next to each other. So it's more difficult to learn on teams, which is why we try and get most of the locals come in at least 1 day a week, maybe 2, and we try and get everybody together. But you have to be, if you're a trainee in this environment, it is more difficult. So I do have some sympathy with the grads that are coming through now compared with all the years I got of learning from other people.
Yeah, I know it can be difficult. So when you began setting up the company, was there any seed of doubt in your mind?
No, I've always been a go-getter. I mean, I've always been incredibly ambitious. I was very frustrated when I worked in university labs because it was so slow, and I always knew I could do better. Also, when I was working in the agency before then, because they were based in Scotland and I was based in Leicester, I was sort of almost working on my own anyway. So you're almost like I was working remotely then.
Yeah.
And we're talking 20 years ago, which was unusual. So I think that self-sufficiency has always been there. And so I've always been a bit entrepreneurial. I mean, even when my daughter was born, we had a farm and we were growing chickens while I had a full-time job. So I never had any self-doubt at all. I'm not a particularly arrogant person, but I am a confident person.
Yeah.
So I knew that we were good at what we did, and we had a track record, and I've always sold on being. I don't really regard myself as a salesperson. I'm really business development or a consultant, and I've always sold on my knowledge and the results that we get, which I think if you speak to a salesman, if they trust the product, they can sell it a lot easier.
100%.
So we really only had a full-time salesperson. Well, we had one a couple of years ago that was a complete disaster. But the one that Ange, who we've got now, who's different Ange, who's amazing. She'll love to hear me saying that she's amazing. She's been with us. She started the October just after COVID, and she's been with us, and she's transformed the growth of the business development team. And it also means they're not so reliant on me anymore, and we do a lot of audits. It's very consultative, and we've got other people that have joined that team now that can also do a really good job of understanding what the client's needs are. So that's quite an important selling point, because if you make the effort at the beginning of a contract and you actually understand the client and what they need to do, that then follows through the whole project. So with a lot of our projects are quite complicated. So we'll be doing Google Ads, we'll be doing SEO, we'll be doing PR, we'll be doing analytics, we'll be doing social media, whatever it is. And so with a complicated project like that, there's usually a client account manager. So you really need to understand the business, and that's how we differentiate ourselves. We really understand, and we've got real specialists in each of those areas. So that works really well.
Yeah, I mean, from what you've said, your track record and your confidence has definitely paid off, because I've seen that you have won, well, Anicca and yourself have won numerous awards.
Yes. Yeah, they do. They can sort of come in like buses, So, and also what I've learned is never go to an award ceremony, because if you go to an award ceremony, you never win. And if you don't go to award ceremony, you come back with 3. I remember it was really funny. I was actually, I do a lot of speaking, and I was speaking in Bologna. I was talking at a Google Ads conference, and I was actually presenting this case study. And literally, as I was presenting, I got an email to say, you won 3 drum awards for this one case study. And I thought, well, why didn't they tell me an hour ago? And I could tell everybody what an amazing result it was. Yeah, we've got a lot to enter this year because we've been doing a lot of really innovative work. I'm really excited about what's happening with AI and data integration. And with so many changes to do with things like cookie policy and privacy, there's a lot of things happening in Google in advertising land and data and analytics with the new GA4 coming in, Google Analytics 4. So if any of you have got a website and you've not heard of GA4, you need to get your skates on because normal Google Analytics goes in July. So you really will need to sort that out. So there's some really exciting stuff going on there, and the results have been incredible. I mean, I can tell you about some of that stuff if you want, but the nice thing is that we've got real good technical experts, and they're suddenly seeing that they've got their own brand to develop. And whereas a year or so ago, it was a really difficulty to get people to write case studies and write award entries. Suddenly everybody, oh yeah, I've got one that I can nominate. I've got some great results with this brand. Can I talk about this, please? So sort of the culture's changed where people actually want to shout about what they've achieved, which is really good.
I think they should. And it must be extremely rewarding for yourself to even be nominated, because I can't believe that you would think that you would be when you first started this. You thought it's the company, and then for yourself to have won 3 or 4 awards.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you start as an owner, manager, CEO, a founder, CEO, because of the visionary aspect, a lot of the founders are in the public eye. So I know a lot of agency owners, and I also belong to a couple of really good agency groups like Grow Your Digital Agency. We've used a coach from there who's amazing. So I know a lot of digital agency owners, and a lot of them came from being really strong technically, really good at speaking and getting being well known for their industry. And then a lot of them fell into becoming agents, creating agencies, because they probably did consultancy to start with. So the first generation of agencies, the ones that are sort of 15 to 25-year-old, either were in doing web development or something else, or they sort of fell into it. And then it's really been only in the last 7 years, the agencies that are about 7 years old, they saw what everybody else was doing and say, well, I want a bit of that. And I want to make loads of money or whatever it was, or I want this fame. And so what you see is a couple of people would get together, they probably work together and say, yeah, we can do this. And often they would grow at a much faster pace because it was a bit more planned. Whereas everything we've done sort of up until recently has been quite organic. And, we've had a couple of years where we've doubled in size, but the rest of the time, we're more thinking about the work that we're doing rather than the growth.
But I can imagine it being organic, and the fact that you didn't necessarily go out looking for any awards or anything like that, must feel a little bit better because you were just doing your job.
Sort of. It's funny though, there's sort of barriers to working with bigger clients. So things like the size of the agency, but also the types of clients you work with. I'm not going to work with that agency unless they're working with somebody that's a bit like me or similar size. So I remember when we first got Experian, and that actually, interesting, was via the training. I was doing a lot of training in the East Midlands, and a lot of the people that were coming to the training courses knew that I knew what I was talking about. And so I ended up working with a lovely lady called Sveni. She worked with Merck, biology background, got that work. Then she moved to Experian. And so once you get a sort of a trophy client, they're sometimes called, that people recognise, then other people want to work with you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is having those accreditations, those exams, because you have to do it to get a Premier Partnership. You have to have a certain amount of value of clients working through your account every month. A certain amount of monetary spend. You've also got to pass exams, and also the quality of the account. So again, that's a barrier to entry. So people that haven't got that, they're probably not working with such good level. And then you've got the awards. So there's sort of 3 or 4 things that that make you stand out of having reached a certain level.
Yeah.
And I think that's all part of that evolution from being a freelancer to a little agency to a decent size agency, and then normally once you get to about 50, somebody comes along and gobbles you up.
So I know how you're talking about how you stand out. So I know for a fact that you work with, and you mentioned you work with Google, your partner ad with them.
Yeah.
You've got other partners that you...
Yeah, I mean, the platforms that we advertise on and spend lots of money on, they tend to have some form of agency accreditation scheme. The advantage of being an accredited agency means that you get certain privileges. So we've had Google speak at quite a lot of our events in the past. So we tend to have a sort of an account manager that will come and talk at our conferences. You get access to a lot of their beta trials. So most of the time we're under an NDA and can't talk about that.
Yeah.
And so there's certain benefits. You get certain discounts and promotional codes and things, and they often give you sort of free training and things like that, or give you access to free data. But it is a little bit how much you spend with them. So depending on where you are in the pecking order, the more that you spend with these companies, the more benefits you get. So it does make a big difference. The other thing you have to do, of course, is invest in other software outside of the main platforms where we spend all our money and our time. So we often have partnerships with other software providers where a good partnership we've got is SimilarWeb, which is a competitor analysis. We've been using a tool called SEO Monitor, which we were heavily involved in when they first started about 8 years ago. So we've got partnerships like that, which are really cool. And again, investing a lot of money in software makes a big difference to the efficiencies and the effectiveness of the campaigns. So we've got special software for sort of management of our time and project management as well. We've spent a lot of money on investing in that and time investing in that recently. The other partnership that I like to mention is sort of partnership with other agencies. So really exciting about this because we're working with a South African agency called Conversion Science, and we've got a partnership which hopefully might become a closer working relationship in the future. And they're really heavily involved in the data and the AI side of things, which is something I'm very passionate about. And also our Drum Awards were around there. And so we've got a joint venture called Digital Science. And the whole idea of that is that as the platforms like Google and Facebook become more automated, you have less and less control. And basically what they're trying to do is do everything for you. So the only thing that you can do, which is different from your competitors, is to use that first party data that you hold in your CRM or your data or your e-commerce or your retail system to actually feed the engine and provide more data to make them work more efficiently. So that's really powerful. And the sorts of stuff we're doing that is things like, I'll give you an example. If you're a mobile phone utility company, every year your clients' contracts will come to an end and you have to renew them. And this is happening on a daily basis. And if you've got 100,000 clients each month, you need a way of managing the marketing that you do to those clients. So one of the things you can do is integrate your CRM data and actually bring that across and create what we call custom audiences. So this is where effectively we upload those audiences into Google and Facebook and do reminder ads before the contract ends. And instead of having to do that manually, because I think in Facebook you can only load 1,000 at a time. It's a real
they make it difficult for you.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a sort of example, but also things like if you're a lead generation company, I mean, you'll know this from in your own business, you're generating leads, but do they actually end up in sales? So when they go into Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever it is, what actually happens, and can you track that lead all the way through to the end of the process? And then if you have got that data, you can then say, well, that source of marketing, LinkedIn was much better than, I don't know, Facebook ads, because actually we got more leads from Facebook, but they weren't such good quality. And so bringing that data in is really important. And we've got a whole series of sort of products or solutions that we can offer clients, particularly the bigger businesses, that probably we wouldn't have been able to do a few years ago. So we started doing this ourselves a couple of years ago, which was some of the Drum Awards. But by working with a real specialist, that's going to really accelerate that. And a lot of other agencies aren't doing this yet. It's only the really big ones, because there's a lot of programming in, a lot of AI and a lot of scripting languages, and most
Yeah.
digital agencies don't like that stuff.
I know AI is such a big thing now. That is the way that the world is moving into. So, does your team kind of like support the AI? Do your services as well sort of correlate with the new
Yeah,
wave of
take
AI?
advantage of it.
Yeah.
I think there's two aspects. There's the AI you see that you don't notice, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, which is really the algorithms and the automation. And then you've got the AI that you can actually proactively use to enhance sort of campaigns. So I'll do the first one first. So I really noticed it when we started to do. We really started off as a search agency.
Right.
So what that means in practice is we try and get websites in the search engines, either by SEO, which is on the left-hand side, search engine optimization, or by search ads. So we're doing that for years. As I said, we were one of the first Google ad partners. About 8 years ago, we brought in social media to support PR and content, and we started to bring in social media. And then more recently, I guess 5 years ago, we started to really expand social advertising, or paid social as it's known. And to start with, it was really primitive. I can remember the first few campaigns I set up myself in Facebook and LinkedIn. And then it became really complicated quite quickly, particularly as Facebook expanded. But what Facebook did, which I found really frustrating, having been a real geek at Google Ads, was that Facebook did everything for you. So you basically said, I want to target these people. This is my ad, and I want it on Facebook, and I want it on Instagram, and it would just go away and spend your money.
Yeah.
And I hated that because you had no control. You could play around with a few ads, and you could play around with the targeting. But compared with Google, where you could control everything, you could turn things off, add negatives, change the cost per click. I found it really difficult, and it was a different mindset. And I guess as a CEO, you're always a control freak. And if you're into PPC, you're going to be even a bigger control freak. But what's happened over the last few years is as AI has improved, Google's gone down the same route. So they first of all started off introducing these smart campaigns, which actually I think are really stupid. And the idea of those was it was really for beginners. So anybody could set up a campaign. There's no skill behind it. You just said, oh, I'm a plumber in Leicester, and find me some traffic. Completely the opposite of what we do. So you've got this polarization of this automation versus these really sophisticated campaigns where you've got remarketing and all sorts of different targeting options. So what they started to do then is they started to say, well, actually shopping ads, you don't need to say what the keywords are. You get that from the e-commerce feed. So the products on the page will trigger what you get found for. They did the same thing with something called dynamic search ads. And then they made the shopping ads smarter. And then they made Performance Max. So all these things are going away from the campaign manager or the agency having any control. And they hide data. So this is why behind the scenes, this automation is going on all the time. So there's a lot of mistrust because, of course, it would mean that you've got to remember Google's there to make Google money, not to make us money. It's one of my most popular sayings. So everything that Google did as default usually spent more money and didn't necessarily give you the results. So if you didn't understand the automation and what Google was doing and the different options, you could really lose a lot of money. So we would come to an account and we could save 30% just like that because the people that were running it before were doing a rubbish job. But the next stage of that is the next evolution of that is being able to use that first party data that we were talking about earlier and bringing in that other stuff. So that automation you can't get away from. That's going to happen. It's going to carry on happening. You can't really fight it. You've got to learn how to utilize it and you've got to feed the automation with the right data. So the case study that I mentioned a little while ago that I said we've got some incredible results, that's exactly what's happening in Facebook. So if you remember a little while ago, Apple changed the privacy arrangements, and suddenly everybody couldn't see the conversion data in Facebook anymore because the browser was blocking all that data. So it was a real nightmare and everybody was complaining because they couldn't get good results. Well, interestingly now you can use first party or server side tracking, which will allow you to still see those conversions. And if you can feed that back into Facebook by using specific plugins, technology, or the new conversion API, what you're doing again is you're giving Facebook really good quality data about who converts. Now, what happens with these tools is, or these algorithms is they know who your converters are. They'll find more people that are similar. And then as you provide more and more positive data, what you can do is you can spend more money and you get better and better results. And you get this sort of positive circle of great results. So for me, the AI side of things really fits with the paid media. And it's very important to be good at that, understand the tracking, understand attribution, conversion, because without that, you can lose a lot of money. Yeah. So that's really important. The next side of AI is how we can use it to help in the day job. So the other big team within Anicca, apart from the paid team, is SEO, organic social, PR, a lot of content, a lot of web content, and things like writing hundreds of product descriptions. We used to write, I think, something like 200 product descriptions for Dykeman shoes every month. Now, you can use some really good text-based AI tools like Copy.ar, Jasper. Some of them are really good and some of them are rubbish. I nearly said a technical term there for the fact that they're rubbish. And that's great, because what you can do is you can put a few bullet points in and it come up with 3 or 4 alternatives. And that content can be really good. It's great for products and product descriptions, small blogs, ads, etc. And that can save you a lot of time. So I definitely think that is moving in that way. And I think that will help us a lot, because what you want to do is get technology to do the repetitive and not difficult, the unskilled, what I would say almost the unskilled jobs. Not all of that's unskilled, but then you use the really highly skilled people to make the decision, tweak it, have the strategy. And that's the approach with that.
Yeah, strategy in this type of job is key.
Absolutely.
It's key. Without strategy, I don't think that there's much point, because you've got nothing to work off of.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I'd rather have the team doing really complicated sequential remarketing strategies where we're utilising the data from lots of different things and the learnings from lots of different types of campaigns. So a really good example is with the B2B campaigns. A lot of people want to do LinkedIn, but it's £6 or £7 a click. It's really prohibitively expensive. So if you really understand how the platforms work and you can create audiences, one of the things that you can do is do video view ads, which are really cheap. So Facebook and YouTube, they're a couple of pence, and then LinkedIn, 10 to 50 pence a view. Well, anybody that's watched that video is interested in your subject.
Of course.
And if you can produce an audience of the people that have watched the video, maybe they've watched half or 75%, and then do your expensive lead conversion ads or your click ads, your traffic ads to that group, then you're going to get a much better response, because you've already filtered out the people that aren't really interested.
Yeah.
So it's sort of doing things like sequential ads or getting people over to your website with great content and then remarketing to them through other channels, cross-domain remarketing, that's called. That's the sort of stuff that we want to focus on, because that's the stuff that other people aren't doing, and that's the stuff that gets the results.
Yeah, so I know you've talking about a lot about AI and that is the future, but looking back before AI, what changes have you seen that maybe have influenced your products?
Okay, I suppose the growth of social from a point of view of paid social has been really important, because a lot of people thought, oh, well, if I do a social media campaign, I'm going to get loads of people to my website, I'm going to get loads of people interacting with my brand. But that's just not true, because the trouble is, even if you have a really big following, a community on social media, and you post something, very few of them actually get to see it because of the way the algorithms work. Yes. And most people don't want to leave social, they want to stay where they are. So what that means is that very few people actually go over to your website. So you might get less than 2% traffic to your website from social media. So of course, paid social has become really, really important. And there's just so many options of things that you can do and so many different platforms. So I think for us, that's been a game changer. The main thing I'm focusing on at the moment, which I guess is looking more forward, is integration. So I'd say about 7 years ago, we started to have projects where you've got not only, when we first started, it would be a paid media, paid search, or we might have an SEO project. But now, because we offer so many services, because we offer PR and we offer paid social and organic social occasionally. A lot of people do their own organic social, but SEO and analytics or whatever it is, a lot of the projects are integrated. So what we've had to do to accommodate that is we've divided the team into two pods. And so what that means is one pod will work on half the clients and the other pod will work on the other half. And so that means that we can use the data from one channel to help others. So it's a much more integrated approach. And therefore, when you're looking at things like your creative, you make sure you've got consistent advertising and content across all the channels. And we do remarketing across different channels and things. So everybody works together. And the data that you learn in one channel helps another.
Yeah, and I suppose even with integration, as well as the user, for example, if the user's on Instagram, they're most likely going to be on Facebook.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so on, so on. So like you said, with the remarketing as well, you can't have the same marketing on every different social media because all of them attracts different people and are there for different purposes as well. So I suppose integration's even more important in that type of sense as well for user experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you've got to remember quite a few of our clients are big enough now that they've got an offline and an online offer.
Yes.
So they might have a retail store, or because we've got quite a lot of B2B, they might have a trade desk or whatever, or they've got resellers. So you have to allow for the fact that, particularly with lead generation, that they're going to interact online or do their research, but then that's going to be handed over to a sales team. So we were doing that, bringing that data back in from Salesforce like 4 or 5 years ago, and that's just grown and grown. But the other thing that I think the way that we've had to adapt, which is quite new, it's only 18 months, is when we were working with clients before, they usually had a creative team or they got their own ads. But as we found that we were doing more video and more social advertising, the quality of the creative just wasn't good enough. And sometimes the websites weren't quite up to scratch as well. So we were having to make a lot of recommendations about branding. And we brought in a guy called Tom Shardlow, who's head of creative and client strategy about 18 months ago, and he'd worked with some really big brands, and so he's revolutionized what we're doing on the creative side. And we actually employed our first full-time designer this week, so welcome.
Congratulations.
Yes, so welcome Andres, who worked at Saatchi & Saatchi in Hungary, believe it or not. So we've got quite a few people from Europe that work with us who've made their home in the UK. So it's a very international business. And so if you think about it, the first two most important things about marketing is identifying who your target audience is, which is why we spend so much money on competitive tools and research tools, and then identifying what their needs are, and then producing great creative that's going to attract their attention. So I guess really we focus on two aspects. We focus on where people know what they're looking for, so the search, the SEO and the Google Ads side of things, and then we focus on the audience and trying to get messages in front of them. Because the trouble with things like search marketing, it's so expensive, cost per clicks and cost per leads, I think I've gone up 90% in the last year, is that it's much easier if people know who you are. So I'd rather people be looking for Anicca Digital than looking for digital marketing training or digital marketing services or digital marketing agency. So if you can develop your brand by having great visibility, and as a result of that, we've started to introduce things like radio ads, smart TV, through things like Sky Ad Smart. So we have had to expand the range of platforms that we work with in order to get the reach to the audiences that we're trying to target.
Yeah, of course. So with the help of your products, you've managed with a lot of big companies and even small ones that had amazing successes. What would you say is your biggest success story?
I wasn't expecting that question. It's great when you win big clients. I mean, we were working with Wattbike last year, and they had a big investment and they needed to go to a bigger agency that could do lots of TV ads. But we had a great relationship with the team there, and they went on to recommend us, and we actually won Uber for Business, which we're now allowed to talk about. And that was based, interestingly, they didn't want a big agency. They wanted an agency that had got a track history, and so they knew they'd got the results. But they also wanted to be treated with a bit of love and care. Because the problem as agencies get bigger, what tends to happen is, and I know some are great, but quite often that happens is that they get rolled out the CEO or the MD or the business development director, and then they end up with an intern. Whereas nearly all of our staff have got 5 or more years experience.
Yeah.
So we're quite a senior team from that perspective. So that was great, winning big projects like that. On a personal level, I think my proudest moment was talking at a conference in USA called SMX Advanced that was actually in Seattle. It was in front of thousands of people. And the girl that was on my panel was a girl called Ginny Marvin, and she's really well known in our industry. And Ginny Marvin now works for Google. And it was brilliant to be presenting. I've been talking at SMX for about 10 years, but to actually get in that audience, in a big audience in the States. So that was really a proud moment. So I really like it when you're standing up in front of a crowd and talking about your work. So that's a really proud moment. It was great getting the Drum Awards for the work that we were doing with the Salesforce stuff. We got free for that. So there's been some brilliant moments, but it's fun. I love my job.
Yeah.
And the scary thing about coming towards retirement, which I joked about at the beginning, is I can't see myself ever really retiring. I think I'll reduce the number of days. But the nice thing is there's a great team of people that will probably take it over and carry on in sort of 5 or 6 years' time. I think the timeline might change because of the current economic situation, which is very depressing. But people still need marketing, and one of the things we learned in COVID was keep the lights on, keep on marketing, and keep on doing the webinars, and make sure everybody knew you were there, and try and help people, because in the end they come back. It's a bit of karma.
So that must be so rewarding, looking back at all your success stories. Was the success based off of the A10 framework that you have?
So the A10 framework was something that I created about 4 years ago. Each of the 10 steps start with a letter A, so things like audit, audiences, goes on, analysis, etc. It was really useful when we first created it, and it's really useful when you're sort of auditing a client for the first time. But on a practical level, it's not something we use for all the clients. And the reason is that we tend to use a slightly simpler approach, which is an always on. So if, for example, you've got I'll use e-commerce as an example, you're going to have certain campaigns like Google ads or Facebook ads that are there in the background all the time. The SEO comes into that category. And then you've also got campaigns which might be seasonal or product specific. So that tends to work when you're implementing it on behalf of somebody else. The A10 framework is probably more useful if you're in-house and trying to develop, because it's more holistic. So it takes in all aspects, and you can use it both online and offline marketing. So I think that if you go to the website and do a search for A10, and you can download it, I think it's still really useful. And there's lots of, even though it's slightly old now, I'm writing a new one. I'm writing one called Integrate, which I've got to do over Christmas because life's just too busy to do it during work time. But I think that's really helpful. And I do feel that the best projects that we work on are the ones that are integrated. You did ask me a question a little while ago about success stories, and I do think it's important that agencies are a little bit more honest with their clients. So one of the things that I've always done is we turn people away, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Sometimes people approach us because they think that it would be great working with us, but they're not ready. Their websites are a bit rubbish, or they haven't got the budgets to invest. And so we tend to not work with newer clients. We will work with startups if they've got investment and they know what they're doing, or they've got a track history somewhere else. So we have turned people away. And the other thing that we do is for some clients, particularly people that have not done paid media before, we will give them a break clause because it doesn't work for everybody. Some sectors will struggle because the cost per click or the cost of acquiring the traffic can be really expensive, and what you want to be doing is getting we use revenue as a percentage of ad spend, a ROAS target of at least 5 to 1. So if you spend £10, you want to be making 50. And for some sectors, they can't do it. Their websites aren't converting enough, or they're not really ready to take on that. So we do lose some clients because it's just not suitable for them. The advertising that we thought would work won't always work. And the other thing, as I mentioned earlier on, sometimes in the end, people will bring it in-house. But I knew we were in, our economy was in trouble back in April. We were getting people sort of saying, oh, it's not working as well as it was. And sometimes when you're working with an agency, the instinct is just blame the agency. And one of the biggest reasons for investing in a lot of competitor tools, well, we got one client who was complaining because we were only 10% up on last year. And then I showed him the data and the industry was down 50%. So to actually be up 10% was a win. But, you know, you need that external data to be able to benchmark. So I do feel that agencies don't work for everybody, and certain relationships work better than others.
Yeah.
But it is hard to get that right all the time, and a lot of agencies saying they're doing an amazing job, but if you go under the hood, it's not quite as shiny as they say it is.
I think a lot of people don't realise how much work goes into digital marketing, getting the brand off of the ground, all of the analytics and just everything that goes into it, and the expense of it as well. I think a lot of people sometimes just think that you sit behind a computer staring at social media all day.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is most definitely not the case. So how many services is it you offer at the moment?
There's about 5 core services, which is to do with, so first of all, you've got the search marketing services, which is SEO and Google Ads. But then really associated, usually if you sell somebody SEO, you're going to be usually selling them PR, because if you want to build up the search engine rank and authority of a website, you've got to do link building, because SEO is the technical aspect, the content and the authority of a website. So even within if you say, oh, we're going to do SEO, actually there's elements to it. You might be doing local SEO. So online and offline PR is another core service. Then you've got paid and organic social. Most people do their organic social in-house, but because now we've got that creative element, we do it for some people. And actually some of our bigger clients, they haven't got the resources, so we do that. Then you've got the sort of analytics type services as well, the data studio, which is now called Lookers, which is all the reporting. So there's about five in there, plus the training. So there's quite a mix. But we do find that more and more of the projects now are integrated and a bit of everything. And I think that's inevitable as people grow. We will attract larger clients, and they'll want a bit of everything. Our clients tend to fall into 2 categories really. There's a couple where they do quite a lot in-house, and they just want to rely on somebody else to do the bit that they can't do. So another bits of my advice is, if you're going to employ an agency, only employ them to do the bits you can't do. So that tends to be things like the analytics and the really highly technical PPC and stuff like that. Or we become an extension of an internal team. So you might have a generalist who's responsible for the e-commerce or the marketing generally, and they want to put everything into one agency. They don't want to have a PPC agency and an SEO agency, because you lose the benefits of the integration by having multiple agencies.
So I know you spoke about that you're in the middle of writing an integration service, may as well call it. How do you think the future and possibly AI is going to affect your services? How do you think you might have to adapt to
actually
them?
That's the reason for a lot of this. So we've always done something in the sense that you have a campaign which uses multiple channels, which we just call multi-channel marketing. The difference now is that things like Google Ads and PPC, a lot of the data that they use isn't the keywords that you tell it to use, it's the content on your website. So if you're doing a campaign for Google Ads which relies on the content of your website, well, why not use your search engine optimization and your PPC together? So I'm seeing convergence of things like SEO and PPC. I think they'll become the same thing, because it's all about the content on the page and the key phrases that you want to be found for, and somebody doing a search. And some of the time they'll click on an ad, and sometimes they'll click on an organic SEO. And to be honest, Google Ads is becoming a paid SEO. So if you can't get found for a key phrase because you're not a big brand, then actually the ads is the way around it. So I see a lot of integration that way. You then got the data integration part of it, and then you've got the remarketing across channels. And then finally, you've got that creative integration as well. So, having creative content that goes across. So there's about 5 different elements to the integration story. I have done a couple of webinars on this actually. And there's quite a nice blog on the site which describes all of this. I've done separate webinars about integrating search and social. I've done separate webinars about integrating data and bringing that all in as under the digital science heading, but I'm not brought it all into one sort of booklet. So that's my Christmas holiday.
That's your Christmas present to Anicca.
Hopefully, yeah. It takes ages to do these things. So although I've got a rough draft, and then I have to give it to the designer who does an amazing job of laying it all out and making it interesting to read.
So that is the future. So looking back, we now know, or we soon will learn, that cookies are very slowly coming obsolete.
Yep.
What is your take on that? Because I know cookies have played a massive part in almost, the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, we're already starting to migrate clients over to what's called server-side tracking. So a lot of the clients that we use something called Google Tag Manager, where we put all the cookies in the code and pixels, whatever you want to call it, basically JavaScript code via Google Tag Manager. But that's still browser side, so it can still be blocked. So what we're doing now is moving over to server side tracking, where the Google Tag Manager and the cookies go on the server. The other advantage, of course, of that is that they all fire at once. It's much faster. So there's a lot of benefits of doing it that way, and the data is much better quality. So that will get over a lot of the issues. The issue that isn't going to go away very soon is the fact that a lot of remarketing relies on cookies that are held on individuals' websites. So I'm a little bit worried where that's going to progress. There's various people looking at alternatives like IP tracking, content, contextual related. We were aware of these issues 3 or 4 years ago, but it's been quite a slow rollout, and in fact Google's delayed it again. I think one of the most important messages is you need to migrate to GA4. We're doing a lot of GA4 migrations at the moment, but the interface itself is pretty rubbish. Again, I was going to use another technical swear word to describe GA4. We're still learning how to use it. Every month we have a sort of workshop with the team gets together to learn the next bit of GA4. So everybody needs to install GA4 to get an overlap of data. We're providing training, we're providing installations, but we're reliant on things like Data Studio, which is again is renamed as Lookers, to produce the reports, because the reporting is still pretty rubbish. And you're not getting what you're used to seeing. And so there's a big migration of that. So I think that's the priority. And then the other priority going forward for us is growth again. So having nearly doubled last year, and apart from the training, it's been pretty flat this year. There's some green shoots coming out at the moment, which is quite nice, because obviously everybody's been worried, particularly after the mini budget. That caused lots of panic. But we had a best month ever in June, and we're hoping to match that in November, December. So we're looking to really start to grow again and sort of go to the next level.
Yeah. So that's actually all really, really interesting. What is the future for Anicca Digital and Ann Stanley? I know you mentioned retirement, but I feel like we all know you're not going to fully retire.
Yes. It's very weird, because when I was 61, because I missed my 60th birthday because we were right in the middle of COVID, which was a real disappointment. So last year when I was 61, what I did was I did a Route 66, because I don't know whether you know this, but you don't retire at 65 anymore, you retire at 66. So I did this Route 66, and I actually showed a picture of me on my motorcycle when I was in my 20s, because I was into bikes. So I thought it was quite ironic that Route 66 worked quite well. Anyway, I sort of said about the things I wanted to achieve in the next 5 years. And they were all about making Anicca and Leicester famous, doing things about the digital skills gap, and also trying to improve the quality of work, because a lot of people do really rubbish digital marketing, so sort of training and auditing and things like that. So I had sort of these ambitions, but it was obvious at that point that we were going to have to do something to get to a point where I could exit and change to more of a part-time role and do other things. So we employed a coach, and we were on this massive growth. We were actually on a growth trajectory before COVID, and then that was a disaster. So we did really, really well last year, and we, as I said, we nearly doubled, and we grow the team, and we put a lot of things in place. So one of the things that made a big difference is the use of OKRs, objectives and key results, and having really structured meetings. That's been brilliant. Working with a coach has been brilliant. I definitely recommend you do that earlier on. I definitely recommend you have a really good team around you. You need to have a partner. You can't do it all yourself, and you need to focus on what you're good at and have clear boundaries, so you can make collective decisions on certain things, but you can go off and do what you're good at and leave other people to do what they're good at. But what I did earlier this year was, I've got 2 grandkids. One's 4 and one's 9, and I love spending time with them. So I decided to buy a holiday lodge in Cornwall so I could spend more time with them and also use it as an investment. It turned out to be a bit of a disaster this year because holiday homes haven't worked out quite the way that we expected, because everybody decided to go abroad. So I probably will spend more time either in Cornwall, or I might even buy in Wales. So I'll probably do some more of that. But the main plan now is to grow the agency to a point where we can find a partner that would want to buy it. Right. But it's got to be the right type of partner. It's got to be the right culture fit. And I've got to make sure that the team are secured. The team of everybody that works with us, nearly everybody's a friend. And you say don't use the word family, but it has been like that. We've seen their kids grow up and get married and split up and all sorts of different things. So there's that sort of buzz about it. And you can do that when you're 30. So what we're hoping to do is sort of get to about 50 to 60 in the next 3 years. And then that would be a perfect size, that the team that decides to stay will stay and carry on running the place. And then hopefully we'll find a partner that's very synergistic, that would want to carry on the legacy. Because what I don't want to do is just sell to anybody who will strip out some of the values and not do the quality of the work, Oh. So I think that's very important to us. So I get offered literally once a month. Somebody says, "Oh, do you want to sell?" Nope, not ready yet. And of course, if you're going to sell an agency or you're going to sell a business, it's all about profitability, because the value of a company is based on profit. And the thing about us is we've always invested back in the business. So if you look at our balance sheet, it doesn't look as healthy as it should be, because we've spent so much money on investing in good quality salaries, giving everybody a 5% pay rise at the beginning of the year. So for us, profitability comes with scale, because we've got great marketing team, sales team, and the directors and everything. We can run the same team, an agency of 50, as we can with 30. So growth is important for us to get that scalability. And then Darren and Angie, the other directors, they're really focused in on productivity and efficiency and being more profitable, so that when we do come to a point that we can sell, I can pay all the new capital gains taxes and things that are probably be announced as I'm talking, and spend more time with the grandkids. But my partner does not want me to be at home all day. He would rather I was in the office so he can wander around the garden, fix his motorbikes up. And so I'm sure that I'll probably work part-time, maybe teach or do some consultancy, something like that, because I'd rather do the stuff I'm passionate about.
Yeah, of course. So Anne, I can imagine you have learnt a lot, gone through a lot, seen a lot throughout your entire career. What would be the biggest lesson that you've learnt?
Whoa, that is a big one. Well, I've had about 4 different careers to start with. So I think it's really, there's a few. I can never answer one question. I always have to give you multiple answers. So I do apologise in advance for that. I do think it's really important that you do something that you love. So it didn't matter whether I was working in a lab or working in the leather industry or doing clinical trials. I've always been really passionate and love what I do. So if you're in a job that you don't like, then you're wasting your time. And for me, work, it's not work because I love doing it so much. So people moan at me because I work at the weekends or whatever, but actually I enjoy it. I'm quite happy to be listening to the radio and sort of writing something or doing an audit, because I actually really love it. So I think you've got to do something you're really passionate about. Otherwise it's a chore. So that's probably the first lesson. The second thing is you need to surround yourself with really good people, and you need to be able to trust them and rely on them, and that's key. The nice thing about working with the other 2 directors, we're quite different actually, but 2 of us, I won't say which 2 of us, we probably most of the time are thinking the same thing or have got the same approach to things, which is great. So we sort of almost know what the other person's going to be saying. So if somebody messages us a question, we probably are answering the same thing. So that's really good. But don't surround yourself with yes people or people that always agree with you, because you're not always going to be right. And you have to be prepared to accept that sometimes you're wrong and other people have got different opinions. So it's really important to get good people around you. The other thing I would say is you don't know what you don't know. And so therefore having a coach or somebody else to help you, I sort of wish we did it about 5 years earlier, because I think if we'd done it then it would have been much faster, the growth, and we would have been able to sort of progress similar to some of the other more successful or the other faster growing agencies, because I think we would have put the right things in place earlier on. Whereas we've sort of I don't think we've winged it, but I do think we haven't had a specific goal that we were going to, and I think that's really important. If you know where you're going, it's easier to. The irony is, I teach this all the time, and I'm telling myself the things that I teach everybody else, and I've realised that a lot of the time we weren't doing it. The other thing is you need to take some risks in life, and I've taken lots, probably too many. So this building, for example, I knew it was a bargain. We got it immensely cheap, and I thought it would be a great place for us to work. There was going to be a huge. I'd invested and done other properties up in my spare time with my partners, so I knew that it was a good investment. But people were, "Oh, are you sure?" Yeah, you guys, as soon as you walked in, you love it.
It's a beautiful building.
Yeah, it's an old converted pub, and it's all been done up, and it's great when we're all here. And so certain things like that, be prepared to take some risks. As a role as a visionary, you've got to be looking forward. You can't be worried about the day-to-day details. You do have to worry, but it's somebody else's job to get that bit right. You've got to be looking about what's coming around the corner. You've got to be, because otherwise nobody will bother. So somebody's got to be looking forward and looking at the horizon and knowing what's happening. Otherwise, those things won't happen, and you just carry on doing firefighting and doing the day job. So as a CEO, if the advice is to a CEO is get a partner in crime that does the bits that you're not very good at. And if you are a visionary CEO rather than an integrator CEO, don't get dragged into that day-to-day stuff without leaving you the time to look forward. So my day-to-day tip is I try and get the work that I have to get done before I get into work. So I sort of get up a little bit earlier. You can tell I go to the gym. I'm shaking my head, everybody. You can't see the video. I don't go to the gym. I'm rubbish at doing the exercise bit. The only exercise I get is running around after a 4-year-old in the back garden at the weekends. But or occasionally go to the pool when we go to Cornwall. But get into a routine where you get the big jobs done that you need to. Eat the frog, I think the expression is, and have that time where you get the real, and then you can spend the time talking to people and doing the other stuff. So you've always got a clear head in the morning and you get the big stuff done, and then get a break every now and again and go off and write a book, which you've asked me to do.
I think everyone would be interested in definitely hearing about your full story.
Yeah, some of it. Good thing I was partying before social media, because there's a lot of skeletons of lots of good parties and having a great time. So it's it's an interesting balance of having a great great time with the team. We've had some great Christmas parties, but also working really hard. But I think that's a classic agency philosophy, work hard, play hard. So
I think so. It's important as well for everyone to feel almost rewarded.
Yeah,
I know it's a job and I know you get paid to do your job, but at the end of the day, you need to feel rewarded and that your work has mattered.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And say thank you. And also be prepared to say sorry if you're wrong, because I think that's important. But look forward, keep going forward. Anicca, ever changing. In impermanence, it means things are changing all the time. And don't be the person that thinks about it last. Be the first. Don't always be the first, but be there at the front, fighting the way and making sure that your business is up to date and innovating. That otherwise, if you don't, somebody else will, and you'll get left behind.
Yeah, and I suppose the lessons you've learned would be your advice to people starting out in new businesses, entrepreneurs.
I think it's easier now to start out as an entrepreneur when I did it. The reason I set up my own business was because nobody would give me a job as director, because women couldn't get a job as director 15, 20 years ago. So it was much more difficult, and it's much easier to set up a business. And also the business models, everybody's made the mistakes. The mistakes that we were making 5 years ago or 10 years ago, people eliminated that and we're able to grow agencies. So it's a lot easier now. And there's lots of help, there's support, there's training, there's grants and things. So I think it's much easier to set up a business now than it ever has been. But it does take a lot of courage, and generally I think the easiest route to do it is to do it part-time. So have a full-time job so your bills are paid, start off as almost as a freelancer. But if you know that you are going to end up having to work with somebody, identify that person earlier on. You're better off going in together with clearly defined roles and having a plan than you are winging it like we did. But I was really lucky. I'm still great mates, still go down the pub with my original co-founder. And, and I've got a lot of people that I've worked with over the years that are still shareholders. And, I've always been happy to give a little bit away, because if you can't do it without other people and without a strong team, without that team around you, you're never going to deliver what you need to.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, it has been so interesting talking to you. Thank you. And I really hope that everything goes your way and you find the best buyers and your family stays a family.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.